When men began to multiply on the face of the land, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves, whomever they chose. Genesis 6:1 and 2.
There certainly have been sightings in that may be embraced by ancient mythology. The idea that the modern sightings might have a relationship with the ancient Nephilim events of the Old Testament is conjecture on the part of some of us as scholars, but I think it would seem to be consistent with the remarks of Jesus himself. As Jesus himself said, that as we get to the end times, he says, as the days of Noah were, so shall the days of the Son of Man be. Now what he might mean by that is simply that it was business as usual until the judgment came, and that's what many scholars would infer. But there are many scholars that believe the text implies even more than that. In order to understand what Jesus meant, we need to understand what the days of Noah were like. And clearly the 6th chapter of Genesis demonstrates that the purpose of the flood of Noah was to deal with what was in effect a gene pool problem.
The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Genesis 6:3 and 4.
The word Nephilim comes from the Hebrew verb nephal, the fallen ones. They are the hybrid offspring of the Benaiah Elohim, the sons of God. It's a technical term, Hebrew term, used of angels. And these fallen angels cohabited with human women and produced a hybrid offspring. It was part of Satan's strategy. This view of Genesis chapter 6 and all of that is not free of controversy today. However, that is the view that was embraced by the ancient Hebrew sages. That is the view that is substantiated by the ancient rabbinical writings. That is the view that was accepted by the early church. When the Hebrew scriptures were translated into Greek, the language is even more specific. And so this idea that they were somehow just a leadership or sons of Adam or something were contrived arguments that emerged in the 5th century, the so-called lines of Seth idea. And that's still taught in many seminaries. The problem with it, it's not biblical. Because in the New Testament, it even confirms this. Both Peter and Jude make reference to this, clearly talking about these angels that went after strange flesh, that abandoned their previous clothing, they disrobed from their previous existence to indulge in this, what shall I call it?
When people are abducted, they're taken on board a UFO, their clothes are removed, they're placed on a table, and they have 3 events that happen to them broadly conceived. There are physical procedures, mental procedures, and reproductive procedures. There isn't anybody who is predisposed to be abducted. The only thing is that their mother or their father must have been an abductee. And what that means is that they're abducted from the time they're infants all the way through until the time they're adults. And they're abducted in great frequency over and over and over again. So they usually talk about having sperm taken, having eggs taken, harvested essentially. When women become older, they discuss fetal implantations where they suddenly realize they're pregnant. And they'll take an early pregnancy test and it shows positive, which of course can't be possible. And they'll go to their gynecologist, who'll do a blood test, which is absolute, which is 100% reliable. And the doctor will say, congratulations, you're pregnant. And they think to themselves, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Doctors invariably think pseudocyesis, which would be hysterical pregnancy, when a woman really wants a child and begins to fantasize it and even causes some sort of physiological reaction. However, most people are not like that. Some people have already had kids, they don't want any more. Some are too young for it. You have to have a certain sort of mental set to have pseudocyesis. Or they think miscarriage. And for women, they would say, well, if I had a miscarriage, I think I would have noticed that. With fetal implantation, we get, of course, fetal extraction. When they are not pregnant, they will remember events that happen where a fetus is extracted from them. It's very, very small, but they'll know during the event that the fetus is being taken. But it happens to them so often, it's familiar. So we see these reproductive procedures quite a bit. In fact, it's critical to the abduction phenomenon. Without the reproductive aspects of it, there wouldn't be an abduction phenomenon. This is the point of it. When people are abducted, as part of the procedures, they will sometimes be taken into a room and they will see containers. And in each container there's liquid, and in the middle of the liquid there's a tiny fetus floating. Later they'll be shown babies. Small, odd-looking babies, as they will report. Their babies don't look right. Physically they're phlegmatic, they look like they're sick, they're not bouncing babies that are grasping and gurgling, they're silent. They almost look like they're half dead. They also have unusual features. People say they look like they're sort of half human, half alien. They're odd looking, yet they look sort of human. My colleague Bud Hopkins says that they called them hybrids originally, and that's a name that's stuck. They then will have to hold the baby, have some sort of physical contact with the baby, put their hand on the baby's stomach, hold the baby close to their skin. There must be skin-on-skin contact. Oftentimes, when the baby's a little bit older, they're required to feed the baby. Sometimes they'll be brought into a room, this is now men and women, where there will be what looks like 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 1.5-year-olds walking around, and they are required to play with them, have contact with them, and we see these toddlers when they're 4 years old, 5, 7 years old, 9 years old. They're already children, young children at that point. People describe them as adolescents. They describe them as young adults. They describe them as adults. And they don't describe them as older adults so much. By the time we see them as adolescents, we see them involved with the abduction phenomenon. Performing tasks, they have jobs to do, they're part of the world of abductions, going about their business, doing what's required of them. Sometimes abductees will be brought into a room and their attention will be directed at a screen-like device. And the person will hear a voice in their mind saying, "Can you tell the difference between us and you?" Now, depending on who the person is, they will say, "What do you mean the difference between us and you? Everybody is the same." And they'll hear in their head, "See, isn't that wonderful? Isn't that beautiful? Pretty soon in the future, we will all be together. You won't be able to tell the difference, and it will be wonderful." Some will be able to tell the difference. Some would say, "Well, yes, this one here looks like you, and this one here looks like us." At that point, they will say, "Well, you know, there will be a difference, but we will all be together, and you're one of the lucky ones. You can tell the difference. Most people won't be able to." The key fact here is that they're all saying, in the future, we'll all be together.
Let's remember that when Jesus briefed 4 disciples in his confidential briefing on his second coming, he opened his discussion and he closed his discussion with the urgent admonition, "Let no man deceive you." We need to understand that the characteristic of the period that we're being plunged into is one of deceit, one of very clever misguidance by the enemy. We do have an enemy. He's very knowledgeable, very resourceful. And we are moving into open spiritual warfare. We're used to conflicts in countries about politics, different views. Today, there's a fundamental war going on in worldviews.
I now believe that this is a kind of integration program into the society. As a program, it is being done for a reason. It is goal-directed, and it had a beginning, a middle, and it's got an end. They are doing this for a reason. That's critically important to understand. Not only that, this is clandestine. It is secret, and it is secret for a reason. I've been involved with studying UFOs and abductions for over 40 years, and it was always kind of thrilling and exciting. Now it's depressing and fearful, and it's not something that I enjoy hearing. As an academic, you're required to examine that data to see whether it's true or not, and if it is true, to go where the evidence leads you, even though you might kick and scream while en route. And I have kicked and screamed en route. But as an honest academic, you're required to do that. And as a historian, you're required to do that especially. And that is where it has led me. And it has led me into areas that I don't want to go. Not only that, it's embarrassing to talk about this. I understand how completely insane it sounds. I am fully aware of my words, of what I'm saying, and the effect that this has on people. Oh, this is just nuts. And I understand that. But in order to be academically honest, I must say it nonetheless, even though it puts me in a very bad position. We now have indication that it's that things are in movement in the early 2000s, and so I think it's going to take a while for them to accomplish this, but I think we're seeing the beginnings of it as early as the year 2002, and for the last couple of years I've been hearing more and more reports of this, and so I think it's happening now. But it's not, I don't think it's sudden. I think it's going to be gradual. There might be a suddenness to our realization of it, but I think that right now we are at the end. We have entered into the end stage of this program, and that's what people are beginning to report. Much to my fear of this going on. I don't like hearing this, but I think that is what people are reporting now, and I just am forced to go with that evidence.